I could hardly believe my eyes. I walked into the room and saw Vanessa in the hot tub with another man. They were sitting way too close, laughing, and looking far too comfortable together. It was clear they were enjoying themselves more than they should. The expression on her face, combined with the smug look on his, told me everything I needed to know. What the hell? Fury surged through me as I instinctively pulled out my phone and recorded a short video. For a second, I considered changing into my swim trunks and confronting them, but I decided against it. Instead, I sank into a chair in the room, my mind racing. No wonder she hadn't wanted me to come to this party with her. Everything suddenly made sense. Vanessa had been working as a secretary at S&G Funds, a hedge fund firm, for a little over a year. She always seemed thrilled about her job. Now I understood why. Earlier that week, I'd noticed a text pop up on her phone, reminding her about the company's Christmas party that weekend. It even mentioned that employees were allowed to bring a +1. When I brought it up, her reaction was immediate. She tried to talk me out of going. "Oh, Ethan, you'd just be bored," she had said, brushing it off casually. Her response didn't sit right with me. "I don't get it. Why don't you want me there? Are you embarrassed to be seen with me, or something?" "Of course not, silly," she laughed. "It's just that these people are financial experts. They'll probably spend the whole night talking about investments and market trends. You'd be miserable." Her company hosted these parties about once a month, but they were usually staff-only events. Vanessa would always come home late, sometimes well past midnight, other times not until the next morning. I had never questioned it before, but now, I had a much better idea of what really happened at these gatherings. "I see," I had told her. "Well, maybe I'd just like to spend the evening with you." She sighed. "Fine, have it your way. But if you're coming, make sure to get your tux cleaned. Just don't say I didn't warn you. It's not going to be much fun for you." Then, the day of the party, she threw me off with a strange suggestion. "You should bring some swim trunks." I raised an eyebrow. "Swim trunks? For a Christmas party? It's freezing outside." She shrugged. "After the party, we usually end up at my boss's penthouse. He's got an amazing hot tub." I narrowed my eyes. "Oh, so this is a regular thing?" "Yeah, we do it almost every time," she admitted with a little smile. "Now, promise me you'll be on your best behavior tonight, okay?" That didn't sound right. "Why are you saying this?" I asked. She gave a light laugh. "Oh, these parties can get a little wild. I just don't want you getting upset over anything you might see. The guys at work can be, let's just say, a little too friendly sometimes." I leaned in slightly. "Well, as long as nothing crosses the husband test, there shouldn't be a problem, right?" She didn't answer. Instead, she just smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and left it at that. At the main event, Vanessa introduced me to one of her coworkers. "Melissa, this is my husband, Ethan," she said. Melissa's eyes flickered over me before she grinned. "Husband? Oh, this is going to be fun. You really are a wild one. You know that?" I wasn't sure what she meant, but Vanessa just giggled. "I gotta go mingle, sweetie," she said, placing a hand on my arm. "Could you grab me a glass of wine?" Before I could respond, she was already pulling Melissa away, not even sparing me a glance. I made my way to the bar, grabbed her wine, and ordered a beer for myself. As I scanned the room, I realized Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. I wandered around for a while, searching for her, but she was gone. After half an hour of looking, I gave up and sat at an empty table. Maybe she'd come find me eventually. In the meantime, I watched as the party went on without me. People laughed, danced, and chatted like I wasn't even there. No one spoke to me. They didn't even acknowledge my presence. I hated to admit it, but she was right. I wasn't having any fun. Worse than that, I was growing increasingly pissed off that my wife had ditched me without a second thought. After sitting there nursing my beer for what felt like hours, I had enough. Screw this. I got up, deciding that if Vanessa wasn't going to spend time with me, I'd just head home and let her enjoy her night with her friends. I started making my way toward the entrance when she finally appeared, arm in arm with Melissa and three guys I didn't recognize. One of them had his hand firmly planted on Vanessa's waist. She barely acknowledged me. "Oh, there you are," she slurred, clearly drunk. "We were looking all over for you." "Yeah, Sure you were. She leaned in and kissed me, and the taste of tequila, mixed with something else, lingered on her lips. I was about to leave, I told her, irritation creeping into my voice. Since you left me stranded for 2 hours, I figured I'd go home. She blushed and looked down. The men with her smirked at me like they knew something I didn't. My fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to knock that smug look right off their faces. Melissa chimed in, trying to smooth things over. Oh, we were just doing shots. Vanessa shot her a sharp look, making me even more suspicious. Shots of what? I pressed. I can taste tequila, but there's something else. Oh, it's nothing. Vanessa waved it off quickly. Then, with sudden excitement, she said, Hey, listen. We're all heading to Ryan's place. He's got the hot tub going. You coming? I sighed. I guess. But are you actually going to spend time with me, or am I going to get ignored again? She rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be silly. Of course, you'll see me later. Then, before I could say anything else, she turned to Melissa and the guys. I'll ride with you if that's cool, she told them. I frowned. Why not come with me? Before she could answer, one of the men grabbed her hand and pulled her along. You can follow us, dude, he said, his cocky tone making my blood boil. Vanessa didn't resist. She laughed as she walked away with them, and I could hear Melissa giggling beside her. Jaw clenched, I got into my car and followed them. When we arrived at Ryan's place, I spotted Vanessa immediately. She had already changed into her bikini. What the hell was going on? Vanessa had already changed into her bikini by the time we arrived. That in itself was unsettling, but what really got to me was where she was, right in the hot tub with 2 guys. I later learned their names, Ryan and Greg, the senior partners at her firm. They struck me as nothing more than overgrown frat boys with too much money. As I stood there, trying to process everything, Melissa sauntered over. So, she purred, leaning in, think maybe you and I could hook up later tonight? I shot her a cold look. What makes you think I'd even be interested in that? I'm married. She raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Oh, I just assumed you two had an open marriage or something. I stiffened. And what exactly gave you that impression? Melissa smirked. Well, considering how Vanessa acts around the guys here, I just assumed you were okay with it. Especially after the way she kissed you earlier. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. What do you mean by that? Her smirk widened, but when she saw my expression, it faltered. Wait, you really don't know, do you? Know what? I snapped. She hesitated, then sighed. Vanessa had just finished with Ryan and Greg. She still had, well, you know, in her mouth when she kissed you. My stomach lurched. My whole body tensed as nausea crept in. Melissa's expression shifted as she realized I was completely blindsided. Oh my God. You seriously had no clue? I swallowed hard. How long has this been going on? Melissa hesitated, then finally admitted, since she started working here. My mind reeled. That was over a year ago. A whole damn year, and I had no idea. I exhaled sharply, trying to steady myself. So that's what she was doing at the party? Hooking up with those two? Melissa nodded. And a few others. My hands curled into fists. I'm really sorry, she said. I just assumed you knew. Then, as if trying to smooth things over, she added, Vanessa really does love you, you know? I let out a hollow laugh. Yeah, I'm really feeling the love. Melissa shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe you should go change. Maybe since you're here, she'll actually behave herself tonight. I doubted it, but I still went upstairs, needing a moment to gather my thoughts. And that's when I saw her. Right there in the room, she was with Ryan and Greg, going at it like she didn't have a husband in the house. The last shred of hope I had, the tiny part of me that wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding, vanished in an instant. As much as I had loved her, there was no coming back from this. I turned on my heel, marched downstairs, and found her just as she was stepping out of the hot tub. Oh, there you are, she said casually, as if nothing was wrong. Why aren't you in your bathing suit? Aren't you coming in with us? I grabbed her arm and yanked her into a side room, slamming the door shut behind us. What's wrong, Ethan? She asked, blinking up at me. I clenched my jaw. Were you ever going to tell me we had an open marriage? She looked confused. What? That's what Melissa told me, I said, pulling out my phone. I pressed play on the video I had recorded. Clear proof of her betrayal. Care to explain this? Vanessa barely reacted. Oh, come on, Ethan. We were just having a little fun. It doesn't mean anything. I stared at her, incredulous. You seriously expect me to believe that? She shrugged. I love you, okay? This doesn't change that. I let out a bitter laugh. It changes everything. She sighed, as if I were the one overreacting. Look, yeah, I was with them, but it's just physical. It's not like it matters. It matters to me, I said, my voice cold. I slipped off my wedding ring and pressed it into her palm. Then I grabbed her left hand and yanked off her rings. Ethan, what are you doing? She gasped. I looked her dead in the eye. You're disgusting. And right now, I hate your guts. I exhaled sharply. Merry Christmas. Hope it was worth it. Her face crumpled. Ethan, please, don't do this. I love you. I stepped back. Don't bother coming home. I'll be talking to a lawyer on Monday. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't mean that. I don't care what you think anymore, I said. I know the truth. I know why you didn't want me at this party. I won't be your damn fool. I turned to leave, but before I could make it out the door, one of the guys, Greg, maybe, I didn't care, called out. Yo, bro, you leaving already? He smirked. You know, that's one hot wife you got. I turned and gave him a deadpan stare. Glad you like her. She's all yours. Then I walked out. By the time I reached my car, Vanessa's calls had already started. My phone vibrated nonstop, her messages piling up, but I ignored every single one. When I got home, I deleted all her texts and blocked her number. Then I changed out of my tux, grabbed some trash bags, and started packing up all her things. Every last piece of clothing, every personal item. I shoved them all into the bags, carried them out to her car, and pulled it out of the garage. Then I removed the garage door opener and changed the code. She wasn't getting back in. By the time I was done, it was past 1:45 a.m. exhausted. I collapsed onto the bed and passed out instantly. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the house phone ringing. Without thinking, I picked it up. Yeah. Ethan, it's me. Vanessa's voice came through, soft and desperate. Please come get me. I scoffed. Screw you. You're not my problem anymore. Ethan, please. We need to talk, she begged. No, we don't, I said firmly. If you have anything to say it to my lawyer. Then I added, you do need to come pick up your car, though. I already packed all your crap in it. Ethan, wait. I hung up. She called again. I yanked the phone cord out of the wall. I didn't want to hear her voice ever again. When I woke up later that afternoon, I checked outside. Her car was gone. Good. Maybe now she finally got the message. Sitting down at my computer, I started searching for divorce lawyers. If she thought she could talk her way out of this, she was dead wrong. Since we lived in a community property state, dividing assets wouldn't be much of a hassle. We didn't own any real estate, so there was no house to fight over. No kids meant no custody battles or child support. As for alimony, Vanessa earned just as much as I did, maybe even a little more, so I doubted she'd be able to squeeze anything out of me. As I continued researching, I discovered that while most divorces in our state were no fault, there was an option to file on grounds of adultery, cruelty, or abuse. That kind of case would be more expensive and drag out longer, but I didn't care. If it made things harder for her, so be it. After some searching, I jotted down the number for an attorney. I planned to call her first thing Monday morning. Just as I was finishing my notes, my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar. I hesitated, figuring it might be Vanessa using someone else's phone, but it could have been anyone. I decided to answer. Ethan? A woman's voice came through the line. This is him, I said. It's Melissa, she said. I just wanted to let you know Vanessa's staying with me for a few days. I exhaled sharply. All right. Are you really going through with the divorce? She asked cautiously. Yes, I am. Melissa sighed. Ethan, she's a wreck. She's been locked in her room, crying her eyes out. I'm honestly worried she's going to have a breakdown. I felt nothing. Not my problem. She did this to herself. Don't you have any feelings for her at all? Melissa pressed. Oh, I do. Hatred and disgust. Mostly, I said flatly. She's been screwing around behind my back for over a year, and she had the nerve to humiliate me in public. We're done. But she loves you, Melissa insisted. I let out a bitter chuckle. Sure, she does. Tell me something, Melissa. What did she do after I left? How long did you all stay at the penthouse? I paused, then asked, did she hook up with Ryan and Greg again? Melissa hesitated. She was upset, Ethan. We all were. I narrowed my eyes. You're not answering my question. There was a pause. Then, finally, she admitted, okay, yeah. We all hooked up again after you left. I clenched my jaw. But it was only to help Vanessa feel better, Melissa added quickly, as if that somehow justified it. You could have had a good time too if you just stayed. My grip on the phone tightened. Where the hell do people like you come from? I muttered, disgusted. I gotta go, Melissa. Goodbye. I ended the call and tossed my phone on the table. That's when I noticed 2 unread text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. They had come in early that morning, long after I had gone to bed. Frowning, I opened the first one. A video was attached. Missed one hell of a party, bro, the message read. I pressed play, and my stomach turned to stone. The video showed Vanessa, my wife, being made airtight by 3 men. I immediately recognized Ryan and Greg, but the third guy was a stranger. Off to the side, Melissa stood watching, completely naked. The unknown man turned to the camera and smirked. That's one hell of a wife you've got, brah, he sneered. Too bad you weren't here. You could have had a great time. Laughter erupted. Even Vanessa was laughing. I gritted my teeth. So much for loving me. With shaking hands, I opened the second message. Another video. This one was just as bad, but it ended on a particularly cruel note. Ryan grinning as he smeared his filth all over my wedding ring while Vanessa held it in her palm. Then, looking directly into the camera, she smirked and licked it off. I felt bile rise in my throat. Any lingering sympathy I had for her evaporated on the spot. I saved both videos to my PC and made a copy for my lawyer. For a brief, angry moment, I considered sending them to all her friends and family, letting everyone see exactly who Vanessa really was. But Lauren's website had warned about reacting emotionally. Any rash move on my part could work against me in court. Fine. I'd wait. For now, I didn't hear anything from Vanessa or Melissa for the rest of the day or the next, which was just how I wanted it. I spent the weekend scrubbing every trace of her from my apartment. On Monday morning, I called my boss. I told him everything. Well, not in detail, but enough for him to understand why I needed time off. He got it. He'd been through a divorce himself, thanks to a cheating wife, and told me to take whatever time I needed. After that, I called Lauren's office and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. On my way there, I stopped by the bank. First, I paid off and canceled the joint credit card. Then, I withdrew exactly half of the money from our joint account and transferred it to a new account in my name only. I wasn't about to let Vanessa drain our savings out of spite. At the lawyer's office, Lauren walked me through the divorce process. She also brought up an alienation of affection lawsuit against her bosses. She explained that while it was a long shot, given the evidence I had, it could at least put some pressure on them. Do whatever you think is best, I told her. She nodded. Where would you like them served? At their office, I said without hesitation. If they had no problem humiliating me in public, then they could damn well get served in front of their coworkers. Lauren smirked as she made a note. Fair enough. After paying my retainer, I left her office feeling lighter than I had in days. Then, just as I was heading home, my phone rang again. Melissa. I exhaled sharply and answered. Hello. Ethan, she said hesitantly. Would you be willing to meet with Vanessa and me this afternoon? I scoffed. Not a chance. My lawyer advised me to stay away from her. If Vanessa has anything to say, she can say it through my attorney. Want her contact info? There was a pause. Then I heard muffled voices. Melissa must have covered the phone to talk to someone. A few moments later, she came back on. I guess that'll have to do, she muttered. After I gave her Lauren's number, Melissa tried one last time. Ethan, she really does love you. and she's willing to do whatever it takes to make this up to you. Can't you at least consider forgiving her? I let out a humorless laugh. She has a funny way of showing love. Then my tone hardened. And tell me, Melissa, exactly how does she plan on making this up to me? Can she unf asterisk herself? Can she rewind time and erase the past year? I let the question hang before answering myself. No, and because of that, I will never forgive her. Melissa sighed. Okay, if that's how you feel, I'll tell her. Then, after a pause, she added, but you know you'll have to talk to her eventually. Not if I can help it. What's done is done. Tell her to expect divorce papers soon. I ended the call without waiting for a response. The rest of the drive home was quiet, except for the thoughts swirling in my head. I made one stop, picked up a 12-pack of beer and a couple of packs of cigarettes. I had quit smoking when Vanessa and I got married, but right now, I needed something to keep my hands busy, something to stop me from punching a hole through the wall. A call from the enemy. Not long after I got home, the house phone rang. I sighed, wondering who was going to bother me this time. Hello? Mr. Walker, this is Ryan, your wife's employer, a young male voice said. I recognized it immediately. Ryan, the smug, arrogant prick from the party. Only now, his tone was different, more professional. I know who you are, Ryan. What do you want? He cleared his throat. Look, I know you're upset about what happened Friday, and I just want to say that we all thought you were okay with Vanessa's activities at these gatherings. I scoffed. So you knew she was married the whole time? Yes, he admitted. But she told us you had an open marriage, that you were fine with it. My grip tightened on the phone. And not once did it occur to you to ask me directly? Ryan hesitated. I didn't think I had to. Right. And the videos you guys sent me Friday night? What was that about? He let out a nervous chuckle. Those were her idea. My blood boiled. So she thought it'd be fun to send me footage of her screwing half the room? Look, I'm really sorry about all this, Ryan said quickly. Is there anything I can do to make it up to you? I didn't even hesitate. Yeah, you can let me kick your balls into next week, right after you testify against her in court. Silence. I continued, oh, and I intend to sue you for alienation of affection. If you really want to make this up to me, you'll accept my terms without argument. Ryan's voice wavered. You're really suing us? Yes, especially since you've been violating your own moral clauses for the last year while actively destroying my marriage. Come on, man, this was all just for fun. We didn't mean to ruin your relationship. I let out a bitter laugh. And what exactly did you think was going to happen? Did you think I'd just sit back and applaud you for treating my wife like a damn toy? It sounds like you've been reading too many revenge stories online, he scoffed. Look, man, we can work this out. A lawsuit like that could ruin us. I grinned, though he couldn't see it. Not my problem. You shouldn't have made my wife your plaything. Goodbye, Ryan. I slammed the phone down, grabbed a beer, and stepped onto the balcony. I cracked open the can and lit up a cigarette, inhaling deeply. For the first time in days, I felt something close to satisfaction. Serving justice. I didn't hear from Vanessa, Melissa, or any of the other cheaters for the rest of the week. It was peaceful. Until Wednesday. That morning, Vanessa and her office buddies were officially served with legal papers at their workplace. A few hours later, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. Melissa. I rolled my eyes before answering. What now? I can't believe you actually did it, she snapped. You didn't even give Vanessa a chance to explain. I scoffed. Explain what? How she spent the last year screwing half the office. How she humiliated me in front of everyone. Yeah, no thanks. Do you even realize how humiliated she is right now? I took a slow sip of beer. Couldn't care less. You're unbelievable. No, Melissa. What's unbelievable is that you're still defending her. Now, do me a favor. Don't call me again. I hung up, slamming the phone down with a satisfying click. A threat arrives. Not even 5 minutes passed before my phone rang again. I glanced at the caller ID, Ryan's office. What? I barked. You coward, he hissed. I'm going to get you for this. How dare you sue me? I laughed. You're seriously mad that I'm holding you accountable for wrecking my marriage? Cry me a river. Vanessa wanted to be with all of us, you fool. Maybe if you had treated her better. That did it. Go ahead, jerk. Keep talking. Every word out of your mouth just strengthens my case. Ryan let out a frustrated growl. I swear to God, I'm going to ruin you. Yeah? Try it. See how that works out for you. I hung up and immediately called Lauren. He's making threats now, I told her. Good, she said, sounding pleased. That just makes my job easier. I'll file a temporary restraining order against Vanessa and her buddies today. You'll have a copy by this afternoon. And if he actually comes after me? I asked. Then you make sure there are witnesses. And don't instigate anything. Let him dig his own grave. I understood exactly what she meant. Things stayed quiet for the next few days. No calls. No messages. No unexpected surprises. Then came Saturday night. I was sitting on the balcony, nursing a beer and finishing a cigarette, when the doorbell rang. It was immediately followed by loud, relentless pounding. I frowned, grinding out my cigarette before heading to the front door. Peering through the peephole, I saw exactly who I expected. Ryan. And he wasn't alone. The pounding continued. Open up, Walker. I know you're in there. I folded my arms. Ryan, you're violating a restraining order. I'm calling the cops. You wouldn't dare, he roared. Open up and take your beating like a man, you little wimp. I ignored him and dialed 911. What's your emergency? The operator asked. I have 2 men at my door, one of whom has already threatened me. He's violating a restraining order and trying to force his way in. We've already received calls for your area, she said. Officers are en route. Do not open the door until they arrive. I smirked. Sounds good to me. Hanging up, I leaned against the door and listened as Ryan continued his tantrum. I gripped the bat resting by the door, just in case. If he wanted to break in, he was in for one hell of a surprise. Goddamn it. Open the door before I break it down. Ryan bellowed as he pounded his fists against the wood. I stood firm, gripping the bat tighter. But before he could do any real damage, I heard a sudden commotion outside. Peering through the peephole, I watched as 2 large police officers grabbed Ryan and his accomplice, twisting their arms behind their backs and slapping on handcuffs. A firm knock followed. Police. I opened the door to see the 2 men restrained, their smugness replaced by shock. Ryan glared at me as the officer led him toward the cruiser. I'm not done with you, wimp. I'm gonna come back and kick your ass. The officer turned to me. Do you know this man? I nodded and handed him a copy of my restraining order. He scanned it, then spoke into his radio before addressing me again. We're taking them downtown. They'll be spending the night with us. He pulled out a notebook. Can you tell me what this is all about? I gave him a summarized version of my situation. He listened intently, jotting down notes. Thank you for your cooperation, he said after I finished. I don't think he'll be bothering you again anytime soon. I closed and locked the door before heading back out to my balcony, cracking open a fresh beer. The next morning, Ryan's arrest made the news. Hedge fund CEO arrested, the headline read. The article was short, lacking details, but I had a feeling this was just the start of his downfall. Over the next few days, more articles popped up. Word spread fast, and clients started pulling their money from S&G funds. Investors didn't trust a firm run by a man who wrecked his employees' marriages. Naturally, their bottom line took a hit. Good. By Monday, I was back at work. It wasn't easy. I felt like a zombie, but I pushed through. 3 weeks passed in silence. No calls from Vanessa. No texts from Melissa. Nothing. Then, my phone rang. Lauren. Good morning, Ethan. How are you holding up? I exhaled. As well as can be expected. I have an update. Vanessa has retained an attorney, and they've petitioned the court for mandatory marriage counseling. I sat up straighter. They can do that? Yes. The judge granted it, 6 sessions, starting this week. That's ridiculous. I have no intention of reconciling with her. I understand, Lauren said, but you still need to attend. If you don't, the judge could hold you in contempt, which could mean fines or even jail time. I clenched my jaw. Fine, I'll show up, but I'm making it crystal clear. There's no getting back together. She hesitated. There's something else. I sighed. What now? Her attorney says Vanessa is pregnant. A heavy silence settled between us. If that's true, the court won't move forward with the divorce until paternity is established, she continued. So I have to wait 8 or 9 months? Unfortunately, yes. If the baby is yours, you'll be required to pay child support. On the bright side, the judge has agreed to a legal separation in the meantime. Wonderful, I muttered. Lauren gave me the address for the counselor. I scribbled it down and marked it on my calendar. Fine. I'd go. But only to make it clear, there was no coming back from this. When I arrived at the counselor's office, I was ushered in immediately. A woman, probably in her late 50s, looked at me over her glasses. Vanessa sat across from her on a love seat, looking miserable. I had a bad feeling about this. The counselor smiled. Mr. Walker, I'm Dr. Patterson. Please, have a seat. She gestured to the love seat next to Vanessa. Instead, I sat in a smaller wooden chair, angled away from her. I see, she murmured, making a note. Still, I'm glad you're here. She turned to Vanessa. Mrs. Walker, let's start with you. What do you hope to gain from these sessions? Vanessa's voice wavered. I want to get back together with my husband. We're having a baby, and I want to be a family again. I snorted. Dr. Patterson looked at me. And you, Mr. Walker? What do you hope to gain? I folded my arms. I want you to understand, there's no chance of reconciliation. I jerked my chin toward Vanessa. Not with that. Vanessa flinched. The counselor nodded. Not even for the sake of the child? I exhaled sharply. I don't even believe the baby is mine. But if, by some miracle, it is, I'll pay child support and be the best father I can. But I'm never reconciling with her. Period. End of sentence. Dr. Patterson studied me. Not even for the sake of... I pulled out my phone. You know what? Let me show you something. I brought up the videos that had been sent to me and handed her the screen. She watched in silence, her expression twisting in disgust. When the videos ended, I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I leaned forward. Doctor, I see you're married. Tell me, if that was your husband in those videos, would you want to reconcile? She didn't answer. I pressed on. And what if you found out he'd been doing that for over a year? What if he did it right in front of you? Would you still want to work it out? She sighed. Mr. Walker, this isn't about me. This is about you and your wife and now, a potential child. I shook my head. Wrong. She has a child to think about. I don't believe for a second that kid is mine. In fact, I'd bet money on it. I turned to Vanessa, my voice like ice. But I do have a few questions for her. Dr. Patterson studied me for a moment before nodding and turning to Vanessa. I think he deserves some answers, don't you? Vanessa stared down at her lap, her face burning with shame. She hesitated before finally lifting her gaze to meet mine. I guess so, she mumbled. The counselor turned back to me. The floor is yours. I nodded in thanks before fixing Vanessa with a hard stare. The night of the party, you knew exactly what was going to happen, didn't you? She swallowed hard, then nodded. Yes. And that's the real reason you didn't want me to come with you? Yes, she admitted. I tried to warn you that you wouldn't have any fun. I let out a bitter laugh. And you were right. It was the absolute worst night of my life. I leaned in slightly. When you kissed me at the party, you deliberately made sure you had those 2 men's. I stopped myself, my stomach twisting. In your mouth, didn't you? Her face turned bright red. She nodded. Yes. Why? My voice was ice. Did I do something to deserve that kind of humiliation? She shook her head. You did nothing. Then why? She sighed. We just thought it would be wicked. Exciting. I clenched my fists. So all of you planned to humiliate me. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. And at Ryan's place, you intended to humiliate me even further. Again, yes. My jaw tightened. How long have you been screwing those guys? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Since I joined S&G. I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my temper in check. Why? She shrugged. Because I liked it. It was fun. It was naughty and exciting. They made me feel good. I felt ball rise in my throat. How many times did you kiss me or give me? I stopped myself again, shaking my head. While still having them in your mouth? She winced. I don't know. A few. I clenched my jaw. A few. I forced myself to take a deep breath before asking my next question. How many men have you been with since you started working there? Not counting me. She hesitated. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. I leaned forward. 4 or 5 what? She whispered, dozen. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 4 or 5 dozen. You've been with nearly 60 men in a year? My God, Vanessa. Are you out of your damn mind? She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Haven't you heard of STDs? Were you trying to kill me? And do you even know who the father of this child is? She hesitated again. Not 100%. A bitter laugh escaped me. But you expect me to raise it and pay for it, don't you? You're a real piece of work. Tears welled up in her eyes. But I love you. I clenched my fists. Well, I don't love you. Not anymore. I let out a sharp breath. In fact, I hate your guts right now. And honestly, I hope you rot. Vanessa recoiled as if I had slapped her. Dr. Patterson held up a hand. That's enough, Mr. Walker. You've made your point. I barely heard her. My whole body was shaking with rage. She continued. I see you're determined to throw away 5 years of marriage. I laughed coldly. I didn't throw anything away. She did. The second, she spread her legs for another man. I shook my head. And let's be real, it wasn't 5 good years. Maybe 4. The last year? She wasn't my wife. She was just a... I stopped myself, glancing at Dr. Patterson. You heard her. Nearly 60 men in a year. She doesn't even know who the father of her child is. No, I will never, ever reconcile with that. Dr. Patterson sighed. All right. I think we've heard enough for today. I want to schedule individual sessions with each of you before proceeding further. We set a date for the following week and left. In the parking lot, I heard Vanessa call my name. I ignored her and walked straight to my car. As I pulled out, I caught a glimpse of her, slumped over her steering wheel, sobbing. Good. Let her feel pain for once. That night, my phone rang. Melissa. I sighed and answered. What now? Her voice was filled with fury. I hope you're happy, Ethan. I rubbed my temples. What are you talking about? Vanessa's in the hospital. She had a miscarriage. I blinked. And? She told me what you said to her, the way you treated her. I shrugged. So what do you want? Sympathy? I told the truth. That's more than she's done for me this past year. Melissa gasped. Did you hear what I said? Your wife? Ex-wife, I corrected. She lost her baby. I exhaled. And? Am I supposed to feel bad? Frankly, no. I don't. My God, Melissa whispered. You really are a bastard. I smirked. Well, you guys only have yourselves to thank for that. She huffed. The least you can do is go down to the hospital and give them your insurance information. Legally, she's still your wife, and if you don't, you'll end up with the bills anyway. I sighed, remembering what Lauren had told me about keeping my actions above board. Fine. What room is she in? Melissa gave me the info, and I drove to the hospital. When I arrived, I spoke with the nurse and provided my insurance details. Then, I had a quick word with the doctor. Any idea what caused this? I asked. He shook his head. It's hard to say. Pregnancy complications happen for a number of reasons. How far along was she? About 9 or 10 weeks. That meant there was a possibility the child could have been mine. I'd never know. And frankly, I didn't care. As far as I was concerned, this just meant the divorce could proceed. How is she? I asked. She'll be okay. We want to monitor her for a bit, but she should be able to go home in a few hours. Thanks, I muttered before stepping into her room. She looked awful, pale, weak, eyes puffy from crying. Melissa stood at the foot of her bed. She glared at me. Are you happy now? She spat at me. I clenched my jaw. Be quiet. Melissa flinched before quickly leaving the room. I turned back to Vanessa, watching as she wiped at her face, her eyes red and swollen. She let out a shaky breath. I guess we're really through, aren't we? I nodded. Yeah. We are. Her voice wavered. Do you really hate me as much as you said earlier today? I sighed. Right this second? No. But that doesn't mean I'll ever take you back. You've shown me I can never trust you again. Every time you'd go to the store, I'd be sitting at home, wondering if you were screwing the cashier in the stockroom. She looked down, shame clouding her face. But beyond that, I continued, I just can't get past your sheer disrespect. I don't get it, Vanessa. I treated you like a queen all those years. Did I do something that made you turn your back on me? She shook her head. No. You were the best husband and the best lover a girl could want. I laughed bitterly. Clearly not. Otherwise, you would have told those clowns to piss off. She swallowed hard. It wasn't you, Ethan. It was me. I scoffed. No kidding. She hesitated, then admitted. They brought out something in me. The bad part. They told me every man secretly wants to see his wife taken by other men. I guess I just believed them. I saw the other girls doing it and thought, why should I miss out on the fun? I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. Yeah, it's all fun and games, until the spouse finds out. We sat in silence for a few moments before I finally spoke again. Look, the divorce is happening, whether you like it or not. You're wasting your time and money dragging this out. Just let it go and move on. We're done, Vanessa. I'm never taking you back. She nodded, tears spilling down her face. All right. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'll tell my lawyer tomorrow. And don't ask if we can be friends, I said. I don't see that happening. Her shoulders shook as she silently cried. I'm really sorry, Ethan. I watched her for a moment. Then, finally, I said, yeah. Turning, I walked out of the hospital room. As I reached the hallway, I heard her sobs grow louder. Tough shit. Good riddance. A few days later, Lauren called. Good news. Vanessa has officially dropped all objections to the divorce. About time, I muttered. Also, she added, Dr. Patterson submitted a report stating that reconciliation is impossible. The judge agreed. I exhaled in relief. Finally. However, there's one small thing, Lauren continued. The report also suggested you go through anger management. The judge didn't make it a requirement, but she did strongly recommend it. I rolled my eyes. Figures. On the plus side, Lauren went on, I've finalized settlements with S&G funds, as well as Ryan and Greg. They all agreed to pay up to avoid court. She slid an envelope across the desk. I opened it, my eyes widening at the check inside. It was the biggest amount of money I'd ever seen in my life. Lauren smirked. That's after my cut, of course. I chuckled. Of course. I deposited the check and moved on with my life. S&G funds, or as I like to call it, Sodom and Gomorrah, closed its doors about 8 months later. Turns out, clients weren't too keen on trusting a company run by degenerate sleazebags. Wonder why? Ryan and Greg? They each spent 55 days in county jail for their little stunt. After that, they disappeared. Their reputations were in shambles, so they packed up and moved to the West Coast. As for Vanessa and Melissa, they stayed in the same crappy apartment and ended up working at some low-end retail store in a strip mall, one of those places that sells cheap women's clothing and knockoff cosmetics. I saw them around a few times, but never acknowledged their presence. They were ghosts to me. I stayed single for a while, casually dating here and there. Then, after a couple of years, I met Natalie Reed, a recent divorcee. She had also been burned by a cheating spouse. We took things slow. At first, all we did was talk. Walks in the park, quiet dinners, movies. She was still healing, and honestly, so was I. I found myself drawn to her, but I let her take the lead. Then, one night, after a delicious homemade lasagna at her condo, she studied me closely, like she was analyzing a science experiment. Do you find me attractive? She asked. I smiled. I find you very attractive, in more ways than one. She arched an eyebrow. Then why haven't you made a move on me? I was starting to think you don't like women. I chuckled. Oh, I like women just fine. It's just, once burned, twice shy. She nodded in understanding. I get that. But we're not all like your ex-wife. True. And we're not all like your ex-husband. She smiled. I know you believe in the sanctity of marriage. I do. And I feel the same way. I met her gaze. Good. She leaned in slightly. So, what are you going to do with this little bit of information? Her voice was teasing, but there was an undeniable heat in her eyes. Do you think you could manage to do more than just kiss me on the cheek? I smirked. Where would you like me to kiss you? She slowly lifted her dress above her waist, flashing me a sultry smile. I grinned and leaned forward, my hands trailing over her thighs. Oh yeah, things were definitely looking up.